Hey guys, tonight, we're diving headfirst into a time and place so unforgiving, so steeped in rigid rules, that even the smallest misstep might leave you cold, barefoot, and confused under a paper-thin roof. Welcome to feudal Japan, where everything from the way you bow to the sound of your accent could get you in trouble. You think you'd do okay. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far this sleepy little community stretches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink awake to find yourself face down in a rice paddy. The smell hits first wet earth, distant smoke, something slightly burnt. You sit up and wipe mud off your cheek, squinting in the gray, misty morning light. You're surrounded by terraced hills, worn footpaths, and two oxen that stare at you like they've just seen a ghost, which given your jeans and polyester hoodie might be accurate. You're not dreaming. Your phone's dead weight in your pocket, no signal, no notifications, just a slippery rectangle of glass and aluminum. The air is colder than you expect, and you suddenly realize you're completely alone, and the world looks like a Kurosawa film with zero CGI. Welcome to the Sengoku period around the mid-1500s. Civil war is ongoing. Central authority is fractured. And spoiler alert, you're not ready. You stand and stumble toward the closest structure, a shack of timber and thatch with a door you're not sure counts as a door. A small, wiry man appears hoe in hand and stares at you like you've just dropped from the heavens, which again, not far off. You wave awkwardly. He grunts something you don't understand and points violently at your shoes. Well, your sneakers. Or not anymore. While you were staggering through the muck, you didn't notice someone slipped them right off your feet. Barefoot now. That cold squelch between your toes, mud mixed with cow dung. You manage a smile. He doesn't. You mime walking and point toward the village, but he's already backing away, murmuring something that sounds suspiciously like Bakemono monster. So yeah, first impressions. Not great. As you limp toward the village, every footstep confirms your worst fear. People here don't wear rubber soles. They wear straw sandals tied with rope. And the few you pass, kids hauling buckets, an old woman carrying sticks taller than she is, all stare with wide, unblinking eyes. You might as well be glowing. Soon a crowd gathers. Not hostile, just deeply confused. Your clothes, your gait, your complete lack of any visible weapon, all of it screams, "Not from here." A few older men mutter about you being a Portuguese missionary, or worse, a European spy. One kid pokes your jacket and shouts something about it being demon skin. One brave teen gestures you to follow, and you do because your other option is standing barefoot in cow mud. He leads you through narrow lanes lined with wooden homes, smoke curling lazily from their rooftops. The scent of miso and grilled fish briefly distracts you from your situation until you trip over a cat and fall face first into a stack of split bamboo. It's loud, very loud. Instantly, 3 men rush out with tools and hand tools that could also be used as weapons. You sit up with hands raised, trying to say, "It's okay," in the gentlest tone possible. Too late. One of them jabs a finger at your jacket, then at your mouth, then makes a slicing motion across his throat. You're not sure if he's threatening you or warning you, but either way, it's time to go. A gruff man with a shaved head and 2 swords appears next. His hakama flutters slightly as he walks. Everyone clears a path. This dear time traveler is a samurai. Not the romanticized, meditative kind, nope. This guy looks like he's had it with everyone's nonsense, including yours. He studies you like a hawk studying a frog. After a long moment, he speaks slowly, clearly, like you're a toddler. You catch nothing. You smile again. That helps. Not at all. He unsheathes the smaller of his swords, the wakizashi, and holds it to your chest. Not touching, just hovering. It's a test. Stay calm. Breathe. No sudden moves. He says something else. And when you still don't answer, he sighs and sheathes the blade with a sharp click. You flinch. He rolls his eyes. The samurai turns and gestures to follow. You do barefoot and limping as villagers part around you like reeds in a stream. Every surface here is rough. The gravel digs into your feet. A stray dog barks. A kid throws a plum pit at your back. Eventually, you're brought to a small enclosed space that smells like ink and incense. A man sits cross-legged behind a low desk. He looks scholarly. Scribes and scrolls around him suggest he's a record keeper, maybe even a low-level magistrate. He examines your clothes like they're puzzle pieces and murmurs something to the samurai, who grunts in response. The scholar then tries speaking to you in Chinese. No dice. Then Korean. Still no. Finally, he gives up and signals for a brush. He sketches something on a parchment, a stick figure you sadly accurate standing next to a temple. Below it, a question mark. You nod furiously. Yes, temple good. Peaceful. He sighs and waves you off. The samurai escorts you outside, points vaguely toward a hill, and gives you a tiny pouch of coins, or are they pebbles? Then, with a final eye roll, he walks away. You're free. Kind of. Homeless, shoeless, and functionally mute in a country that's mid-civil war. Your phone's a paperweight. Your hoodie is now suspicious. Your stomach's already growling, and you've been here less than 3 hours. Historians still argue whether the common folk in feudal Japan viewed foreigners with awe, suspicion, or simply confusion. The reality, it probably depended on how hungry the locals were and how weirdly you dressed. Here's your fun fringe tidbit. In 1570, a European Jesuit priest once got mistaken for a ghost by a village elder because of his pale skin and glowing cross. They tried to exorcise him with rice wine and shouting. You might not be so lucky. You're on your own now, stumbling down a dirt path that seems to lead uphill into what you assume is a village shrine. It's either that or a rice storage hut. Honestly, everything here looks like it was handcrafted by a team of overworked spirits. The wind picks up slightly, tugging at your hoodie, and the chill reminds you that whatever pouch of coins or river rocks the samurai gave you won't buy comfort. Especially not if you can't say a single useful word. You pass a sign carved into wood. Bold black characters painted with precision. Beautiful, really. Utterly meaningless to you. You try scanning it like it's a restaurant menu. Spoiler, no QR codes. Just kanji complex logographic characters that take a local kid years to master. You barely passed high school Spanish. Still, you squint, hoping maybe context will help. Maybe there's a picture of food, a bathhouse, an arrow. Nope. Just angry-looking brushstrokes that could say, welcome, or enter and be cursed forever. Honestly, you'd believe either. You try talking to an old man selling something that vaguely resembles dried seaweed and maybe roasted bark. Hi, English, konbanwa, you say with a hopeful shrug. He stares at you, jaw slightly slack. You repeat yourself, adding hand gestures that look more like interpretive dance than communication. He blinks, then very slowly says something in a language that could be Japanese or possibly eldritch magic. You smile, nod, and back away. And in your head, a sudden realization you are terrifyingly helpless. See, this isn't like visiting Tokyo with Google Translate and a SIM card. This is pre-kanji standardization Japan. Even if you miraculously knew a few Japanese phrases from your anime binge days, they wouldn't help here. The accent, vocabulary, and grammar were wildly different. Words were influenced by ancient Chinese Buddhist texts and regional dialects that would have made the average villager sound like they were from another planet. Historians still argue whether the spoken Japanese of the 16th century could be understood by modern Japanese speakers without serious training. Most agree it would sound like Shakespearean English if Shakespeare had never seen plumbing and thought umbrellas were demonic shields. You come across a group of children playing with a bamboo hoop and a stick. They stop and gawk at you wide-eyed. One brave girl runs up and touches your hoodie sleeve like it might bite her. She gasps and runs away squealing with laughter. You try saying hello very slowly and clearly. A boy throws a small pebble at you in response. Another yells something that sounds vaguely like Noprabo, a faceless ghost. You don't blame them. You keep walking. Each time you try to speak, you're met with puzzled frowns or gentle retreat. You try writing in English with a stick in the dirt. A man sees it, gasps, and steps back like you just summoned a curse. A few people gather murmuring. One woman whispers something that sounds like Tengu, a kind of mythical goblin trickster. You are officially the village's weirdest rumor now. Eventually, a young Buddhist monk approaches. Shaved head, warm eyes, simple robes. He holds his hands up in peace and sits down cross-legged in front of you. He doesn't speak right away. He just listens. You babble something about being lost from another time, looking for help, anything. You point to the sky, the hills yourself. The monk nods solemnly, as if this isn't the weirdest thing he's heard today. Then he takes a stick and writes a single kanji character in the dirt. You can't read it. He writes another, still meaningless. But when he draws a simple sun, you nod. Sun, you say. He repeats, hi. You smile. Progress, sort of. Except every word has 10 meanings, 2 honorifics, and a pitch accent that if you get wrong could turn I'm hungry into your mother is a pig. You try learning anyway. The monk teaches you the word for food, tabemono, thank you, arigato, and yes, hey. You say them over and over, sounding like a toddler with a concussion. Still the monk smiles. Encouragement is something at least. But don't get cocky. Even if you memorize 20 words, it won't save you from the next disaster. Politeness rules here are intense. There are entire verb forms just for talking to people above or below your status. Guess wrong, and you're not just being rude, you're committing social suicide. Fun fact, in this era, samurai could legally execute commoners who spoke to them with insufficient respect. No trial, no warning. Just whoosh, and suddenly you're headlining your own funeral. And here's a fringe gem. In some rural regions, villagers developed hand signals and whistling systems just to communicate across rice paddies or between mountain paths, especially when literacy was low. So even if you somehow learned spoken Japanese, you'd still be missing the hyper-local dialects and context-specific slang. That monk, he's a rare mercy. But don't expect a monastery to take you in for long. Resources are tight. You're a mouth they didn't plan to feed, and charity is a luxury when rice is currency. Eventually, the monk gives you a crude charcoal map and a small rice ball wrapped in bamboo leaf. He presses his hands together, in farewell mutters a prayer, and leaves you by the edge of the forest. And now you're walking again. Alone, barefoot, stomach half full, tongue practically useless. Every chirp of a cicada, every rustle in the bamboo sounds like a warning. If a wild boar attacked you right now, you wouldn't even know what scream to use. Here's the kicker: the villagers will talk about you. They'll invent stories. Some will say you're a spy from the Ming Dynasty. Others will say you're the ghost of a drowned foreign sailor. Someone might even say you're the rebirth of a forest spirit. No matter what, your odds of making friends without a shared language are slim. And so the language barrier isn't just a problem, it's your death sentence in slow motion. Your feet hurt. Not in the "I've been shopping too long" kind of way, but in the barefoot gravel trek through an unforgiving feudal backwater kind of way. Every pebble is a dagger, every root a betrayal. By now your hoodie is spattered with mud, the rice ball is long gone, and your stomach is making noises loud enough to startle passing birds. Eventually, you stumble upon a village gate, or rather two crooked posts with a horizontal beam and a suspiciously stern man leaning against it, chewing what might be tobacco or just a particularly bitter leaf. He watches you approach, like he's already decided your trouble, which in fairness, you absolutely are. He doesn't move, just squints and mutters something under his breath. You bow too low, too quickly. Amateur move. He barks a word that sounds like "Nanimono, who are you?" You freeze. He repeats it louder this time. You try the monk's words, "Tabemano, food." He frowns. You switch to "arigato," the only other word you know. He takes that as mockery. Not good. He calls someone over. Another man, lean and stern with the kind of permanent scowl that screams middle management with a sword. This one isn't chewing anything. Instead, he studies your clothing like he's trying to decide what species you are. Then, in one smooth motion, he draws a short blade and points it at your throat. Not touching, just floating there in case you forget your place. You're beginning to realize something crucial in feudal Japan's social roles are everything. And you, friend, don't have one. The society you've dropped into is rigidly hierarchical. At the top, the emperor, a divine figure. Below him, the shogun, the real power. Beneath that, daimyo, the warlords. Then the samurai sworn to their lords. Then peasants, artisans, and merchants. And way beneath all of them, you. You are not a peasant. You do not own land. You don't even belong to a clan. You are not a merchant, artisan, or anything remotely useful. You're just a barefoot weirdo in a mud-crusted hoodie with no known master. And that's dangerous. Because in this world, to be a masterless person, a ronin without a sword, a peasant without a field, a monk without a temple, is to be suspicious by default. You might be a spy, a bandit, or worse, a Christian missionary. In this period, Christianity has made inroads, and already the ruling classes are getting nervous about foreign influence. Historians still argue whether the Japanese elite feared missionaries for religious reasons or simply saw them as Trojan horses for colonization. Either way, walking around in foreign garb while not speaking the language is not doing you any favors. The guard waves you in, but only after confiscating your hoodie. He pokes it like it might explode. You're now shirtless in early spring, freezing, fantastic. Inside the village, things get even more complicated. People here aren't curious, they're cautious. You catch whispers. Someone says Yamabushi, mistaking you for a mountain hermit. Another says Hinin the Untouchables, a class so low, they handle executions, clean toilets, and live on the edge of town. That's closer to the truth than you'd like. You make it 10 steps before a woman drops a bucket at the sight of you. Two kids scream and bolt. A dog growls. You've clearly entered the "what the hell is that" stage of your visit. Then comes the big mistake. You walk past a group of men unloading barrels. You try to help because, hey, teamwork, you lift one. It's heavier than it looks. You stumble, trip, and the barrel crashes open, soy sauce everywhere. Instantly, the men shout. One slaps your arm. Another grabs you by the neck of your now hoodieless shirt. A third punches you in the ribs, not a full punch, but enough to say, "Don't touch what isn't yours." You double over, gasping, as someone else yells for the constable. That's when a samurai steps in. You don't see him arrive, you just hear the silence that follows. People part. You look up. He's older, wearing 2 swords and a robe so crisply folded it looks ironed by angels. His expression is unreadable. He walks straight up to you and says something that sounds like a question. You cough, wheeze, and whisper arigato again. Wrong answer. He sighs and says a single word, "Ita." The crowd murmurs, "Congratulations. You've just been mistaken for an untouchable." Here's your historical fact. Feudal Japan had strict caste-like divisions, and the Barakumin, or Eta, and Hainin were ostracized from society. They couldn't live within the main village. They handled slaughter executions, leatherwork jobs seen as impure. And now that's you. You're dragged to the edge of the village. Not jailed, not beaten, just dumped like a stray cat someone's too polite to kill. A boy throws a stone at you. It hits your shoulder. Not hard. Just enough to sting. Later, a woman sneaks you a bowl of something warm. It smells like miso and regret. You nod thanks, whispering hi. She doesn't reply. The sun sets. You curl into yourself beneath a tree, cold and sore, with soy sauce still clinging to your skin. And here's the kicker, you could have been anything. If you'd arrived in a kimono speaking a dialect citing a family name, maybe you'd be mistaken for a low-level merchant. Maybe even a lost apprentice. But you didn't. You arrived in synthetics, muttering English, touching things and breaking barrels. You failed every social test. The structure of feudal society didn't just sort people, it protected them from outsiders. You don't fit. And that means, in the eyes of everyone here, you're expendable. You're starting to itch. It begins around your collarbone, small, persistent maddening, then spreads to your arms, your sides, your scalp. At first you think it's just dried soy sauce, but no, it's something else, something alive. You're infested. While you shivered through the night beneath that twisted old pine tree, some tiny 6-legged opportunists made themselves very much at home. Welcome to the world of feudal Japanese clothing etiquette, where what you wear doesn't just say who you are. It decides how clean, respected, and frankly lice-free your life will be. You scratch your neck as the sun rises over the village, your body a battlefield of insect rebellion. A child watches you from the edge of the nearby path, then shouts something you don't understand before running off like you just started foaming at the mouth. You try to ignore it. You've got bigger problems, like not wearing clothes that identify you as part of anything. See, feudal Japan was a world of visual cues. Silhouettes, fabrics, patterns, and even how you wore your sash were all indicators of class, profession, and origin. Your hoodie, back when it wasn't confiscated, was a disaster. Now standing in your sweat-stained undershirt and a pair of modern boxer briefs, still miraculously intact, you look like a cursed marionette from a folktale parents tell to keep their kids in line. You try begging, though it's more like gesturing at your chest, shivering dramatically, and pointing at other people's clothes, like some sad street performer. Eventually, a kind merchant woman, maybe out of pity, maybe to stop you from giving her kids nightmares, hands you a bundle. It's a yukata, simple cotton, slightly frayed at the hem, still better than your half-naked foreigner cosplay. Changing into it feels like slipping into someone else's life. The fabric is coarse and the sleeves fall strangely. The left side is supposed to go over the right unless you're dead. You remember that from a samurai documentary. so you double-check. Leftover right, crisis averted for now. But even in your borrowed clothes, you don't blend in. Your posture's wrong. Your hair, whatever length or style you had, is all wrong. Your skin, your gait, your expression, all foreign. You may as well be glowing again. And people notice. You walk down a narrow alley and accidentally make eye contact with a group of artisans sitting around a lacquered box. One of them points at your sash. It's tied in a simple knot fastened in the back. Another shakes his head, muttering something that sounds like Ana no Musubi, the woman's knot. You tied it wrong. They laugh. Not kindly. Embarrassed, you duck into what you hope is a food stall, but turns out to be a tofu shop. You apologize wordlessly, backing out. The shopkeeper glares at your bare feet. You forgot your sandals. Historically, sandals, waraji or zori, weren't just footwear. They were another social signal. Samurai had special straw sandals with toe loops. Merchants had sturdier soles for longer travels. Even the Hinin wore rags twisted into something sandal-shaped. You're barefoot and shameful, the ancient equivalent of walking into a business meeting in swim trunks. And remember that lice problem. Yeah, it's getting worse. You spot a flea jumping from your sleeve. Fantastic. The yukata woman takes pity on you again and hands you a small pouch filled with dried chrysanthemum petals. You're not sure if it's for tea or scrubbing. You rub it on your arms. It kind of works, but now you smell like a haunted flower shop. You try cleaning yourself in a stream, and in doing so, accidentally moon a passing rice farmer. He yells. You trip. You fall into the water. You emerge soaking wet, freezing, and now more suspicious looking than ever. That's when a traveling priest shows up. He's lean with alert eyes and a heavy walking staff. He watches you head tilted. Then he points to your yukata, speaks one word, kataginu. You shake your head. He frowns. You've misrepresented yourself. Kataginu, those formal shoulder extensions used by the samurai and officials, are nowhere on your outfit. But the way you wrapped the sleeves and let the collar sit, you just accidentally implied you are one. That could get you killed. Pretending to be a samurai, that's not just embarrassing, it's treason. The samurai were the only ones allowed to wear two swords, to walk with open arrogance, and to settle disputes with immediate, frequently bloody justice. Commoners who mimicked them could be executed. No trial. Just swift, iron-sheathed discipline. Historians still debate how often this happened, or whether warnings came first. Some say public humiliation was used more than execution. Others point to records where peasants were beheaded for wearing their headscarves too arrogantly. So yeah, don't risk it. You stumble away from the priest, pretending not to understand. He watches you go. Later that day, a local tailor grabs you off the road. Not in malice, more like exasperation. She sees your botched sash, your misaligned collar, and the fact that you're scratching like a man possessed. She clucks her tongue and marches you into her shop. You sit in silence as she snips, ties, adjusts. Her assistant fans you with woven straw while dabbing something herbal onto your wrists. You feel like a cross between a leper and a misbehaving house cat. After 20 minutes, she steps back and nods once. You look acceptable now. Not accurate, but acceptable. She even offers you a pair of wooden gaita sandals, raised platforms that click with every step. You take one walk around the room and immediately trip on a smooth rock, nearly knocking over a pot of ink. Everyone gasps. You apologize in 3 languages. One of them might be Klingon, but the tailor just laughs. It's the first genuine smile you've seen since arriving. You bow deeply, and this time correctly. Right angle, no twitching, no flailing hands. She returns the bow less deeply, of course. She's higher in status now. You're just a confused stranger in a half-decent outfit. Here's a strange but true historical tidbit. Samurai fashion was so regulated that some domains issued manuals on how long one's hakama should be based on rank. There were even restrictions on color. A peasant in purple grounds for arrest. You leave the shop looking like a confused apprentice from nowhere in particular, which is an improvement. Still itchy, still barefoot inside the wrong doors, still unable to speak. But you've survived another day, and now at least you look like someone the villagers don't want to immediately expel. For now, you wake up with your face pressed into a woven mat that smells like mildew smoke and possibly pickled radish. Your neck is at a right angle, your arms are numb, and something small and suspicious just scurried across your ankle. It's either a beetle or a mouse. Either way, good morning. You've just completed your first night in a traditional Japanese dwelling, and spoiler, it wasn't booked through Airbnb. The tailor, bless her stoic soul, let you sleep in the back corner of her shop. No pillow, no blanket. Just your borrowed yukata and a bundle of folded cloth you optimistically mistook for a futon. And no, there's no mattress. Those weren't really standard issue for peasants. If you were lucky, you might get a worn tatami mat. You got an aggressively textured straw mat that left patterns on your face. You stretch, instantly regret it. Your spine emits a pop so loud that even the rooster across the street crows in solidarity. You shuffle toward the doorway and step outside into a world cloaked in morning mist. The village is waking up. Smoke curls lazily from kitchen chimneys. A dog barks in the distance. Someone sneezes. It should feel serene. It does not. You are immediately sucker-punched by a smell so vile, so raw, so deeply committed to being offensive that it hijacks your senses and makes you audibly retch. Toilets. Or more accurately, the distant cousins of toilets. See, bathroom technology in feudal Japan was functional. The most common type A communal squat latrine, a deep, unventilated pit covered by a wooden platform with a hole in it. The contents are visible, and odor is not a gentle background note, it's a full chorus line of horror. You gag again. And the worst part, toilet paper isn't a thing yet. For the average villager, wiping options include leaves, seasonal rags, rare twigs, and the occasional scrap of unwanted documents if you're literate and ruthless. You unfortunately have neither foliage nor papyrus, just trembling legs and a very fragile ego. Eventually, you find the village outhouse. It's more of a three-sided shed with a partition and a tilt. There's a short line. You join it. Everyone avoids eye contact. When your turn comes, a man exits and nods at you like a veteran saluting a recruit. You step in. You look down. You hesitate. Squatting seems simple until you're the one doing it. You lower yourself carefully, knees wobbling, ankles screaming. Your borrowed yukata bunches uncomfortably in the back. Your balance falters. There's a moment of panicked flailing. Then thunk. You smack into the back wall, just barely avoiding a disaster that would have haunted you for life. You limp out moments later, spiritually bruised. A small child passing by stops, points, and says something that sounds an awful lot like baka. You deserve it. You shuffle through the village with the slow, shaky gait of a man who's both humbled and deeply traumatized. That's when you hear splashing. At the riverbank, two women are crouched over a wooden washboard rinsing laundry. The water glints in the morning sun, and steam rises from a pot beside them. One of the women glances up, gives you a slow once-over, and raises an eyebrow. You bow politely. They whisper to each other, probably about your posture or the visible flecks of straw in your hair. Still, they motion you closer. You kneel beside them and watch as they slap garments rhythmically against the washboard, scrubbing with soap made from ash and plant oils. They're chatting in the kind of casual, fluid way that only happens between people who have known each other and done this exact chore for years. You smile awkwardly, then sneeze. They hand you a damp cloth. You use it to clean your face, your hands, and finally your dignity. One of them nudges a small bar of washing soap toward you, murmuring something kind-sounding. Here's your historical fact. In feudal Japan, communal laundry was a regular social event. Women would gather near streams or public wells, exchanging gossip while scrubbing clothes by hand. Soap was homemade and rarely scented, though some mixed in dried herbs like mugwort or chrysanthemum. You rub the soap on your arms and neck, trying to erase the lingering outhouse trauma. One of the women offers you a small pot of warm water to rinse. You bow in thanks. She giggles when you spill half of it on yourself. Then, in a move that surprises everyone, including you offer to help with the washing. They look at each other, then at you, then shrug. You're handed a child's yukata and shown how to wring it properly. It's harder than it looks. You splash water everywhere. One sleeve slaps you in the face. But you try. You learn. And slowly, you begin to earn a smile. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some superstitious villagers believed that washing clothes at night invited evil spirits to cling to the fabric. Daytime laundry was not just practical, it was protective. You're safe. For now. By the time you return to the tailor's shop, your arms are sore, your legs are still shaky, but your spirit feels marginally less crushed. You survived the outhouse. You helped with laundry. You're still itchy, still underfed, still wildly underqualified for this century, but just maybe slightly more human in their eyes. You're hungry. Not just I skipped lunch hungry, but that slow, gnawing, brain-fogging kind of hungry that makes you seriously consider whether tree bark is edible. Spoiler, it isn't. You learned that the hard way this morning when you tried to nibble a twig out of desperation and nearly broke a molar. Dignity gone, hunger still there. You wander through the village, stomach groaning like a rusted gate hinge. Every scent makes it worse. Someone is grilling something, fish maybe. Or it could be a very optimistic rat. You're too far away to tell. You creep toward the smoke like a cartoon character drifting on a scent trail, half expecting to float. The source, a tiny stall with a smoking brazier and skewers of fish curling in the heat. The vendor is an older man with no teeth and one extremely judgmental eyebrow. You point to the food. He shakes his head. You gesture to the coin pouch the samurai gave you. You've still got a few left. You hold them out. He picks one up, squints, and snorts, then tosses it back like you just offered him Monopoly money. Apparently, your mysterious little bag contains a mix of actual currency and useless slugs of metal. Welcome to the barter economy. Feudal Japan didn't run on cash the way we think of it today. The primary unit of currency for many wasn't the coin, it was rice. Real, measurable rice. Koku was the unit. 1 koku equals enough rice to feed one person for a year. Daimyos were judged by how many koku their lands produced. Your coin pouch. Basically lint by comparison. You, friend, are broke. You try asking for food the way a monk might, palms together, a polite bow, the soft itadakimasu you heard someone say earlier. The vendor raises his eyebrow even higher and waves you off like a bad smell. You stumble away, shame in your gut where the rice should be. You pass a child gnawing on a roasted chestnut. She looks at you with something between pity and mild amusement. Then with a shrug, she offers you half. You could cry. You bow so deeply, you almost fall over. The chestnut is warm, smoky, slightly bitter. It is hands down the best thing you've eaten since arriving possibly in your life. You savor it like it's Michelin-starred sushi. Fun fact, chestnuts were a vital staple in many rural Japanese diets. Before sweet potatoes spread through the country, and in times when rice was scarce, roasted nuts, millet, and barley filled the gap. Chestnuts were cheap, hardy, and didn't insult you when you tried to buy them. But one chestnut won't fix your problems. You need a meal, a plan, and maybe a job. You drift toward the rice fields. Men and women are already knee-deep in muddy paddies, planting stalks with mechanical precision. Their motions are hypnotic. Bend, plant, straighten. Repeat. The water's up to their shins, leeches probably lurking, and they don't even flinch. These people are built different. You approach a man pulling a small cart. He sizes you up, then points to a basket. You pick it up. He nods. Just like that, you've been conscripted into agricultural labor. No training, no questions, just bend, plant, straighten. Your back starts to complain within 5 minutes. After 10, you're sweating. After 20, you're shaking. A child 2/3 your size works circles around you without breaking a sweat. And then your foot slips. You land face first in the mud, one arm twisted under you, your mouth full of water that may or may not contain frog eggs. The others burst into laughter. One man tries to help you up, but your hand slips and you nearly take him down with you. The next hour is a montage of you falling, struggling, and being gently roasted in ancient Japanese peasant dialect. You earn half a rice ball. Literally, that's your pay. And a handful of barley grains which you eat raw, chewing them like a desperate squirrel. Historians still debate how many days a laborer could work without proper nutrition. But one thing's certain, it wasn't many. Malnutrition was common. Diseases like beriberi caused by a lack of vitamin B1 ran rampant. You're on track to star in the next textbook case. To make things worse, your attempt to rest under a tree is cut short when a local merchant accuses you of stealing his basket. You didn't. But you do happen to be holding a very similar one. He shouts. You try to explain. The crowd gathers. A village elder appears serious and stern. You expect justice. What you get is humiliation. He orders you to kneel while the merchant scolds you in a tone that could curdle milk. You're slapped lightly, but in front of everyone. The real basket thief probably long gone. You're now the idiot foreigner who fumbled a day's labor and got accused of petty theft. Eventually, the crowd disperses. You sit alone, cheeks burning, lips, dry stomach hollow. That's when an old woman appears. No words, just a soft grunt. She sets down a bowl of soup miso with tofu and something green and slightly suspicious. You don't care. You eat like you've never eaten before. And here's your fringe detail in some rural areas. They were communal soup pots cooked over a fire all day, open to those who helped in the fields. You by sheer luck qualified. You bow. You whisper the one word you know, arigato. She doesn't reply. Just pats your shoulder and walks away. You lean back against the tree, rice grains stuck to your chin, miso broth still warm in your belly. No money, no skills, no Japanese. But today at least, you didn't starve. That's a win. You're not well. At first it's just a chill. Nothing dramatic, just a persistent shiver in your spine as night falls. But soon it deepens, settles into your bones like bad news. You try to sleep it off in a tool shed offered by the same kind-hearted elder who gave you soup. The roof leaks. The The straw bed is damp, and you're sweating, but you can't stop shaking. Congratulations, you've contracted your first feudal fever. In the 16th century, catching something wasn't a matter of if, it was how fast. No vaccines, no antibiotics, no Google search to diagnose your symptoms. Just your immune system, a few sticks of incense, and whatever herbs someone foraged that day. You spend the night tossing on straw, your breath shallow, your skin hot to the touch. The tailor's assistant stops by in the morning, takes one look at you, and bolts. Apparently, you look worse than a cursed doll pulled from a well. A monk arrives a few hours later. Not the one you met before. This one's older, leaner, with eyes like dark pearls. He places his hand on your forehead, clicks his tongue, and mutters, "Kaz." That much you understand. A cold. Although given how you're trembling and sweating and hallucinating a little boy with antlers waving at you from the doorway, this might be more than a cold. He unwraps a satchel of remedies. Dried roots, crushed leaves. One suspicious jar filled with what looks like ground-up moth wings. He mixes it all in hot water and offers it in a carved wooden cup. You sip. It's bitter, earthy, vaguely like licking a grave. And then out comes the leech jar. You try to sit up. He presses you back down gently but firmly. "Daijobu," he says. It's okay. Reader, it is not okay. Two long, glossy leeches are placed just below your collarbone. You want to scream. You don't. You just lay there staring at the rafters, pretending you're not watching your blood be siphoned by glorified sea noodles. Fun fact, leech therapy wasn't uncommon in feudal Japan. It wasn't first-line treatment for everything, but it was used to balance the humors or reduce fever when paired with herbal remedies. And honestly, sometimes it worked. Not because leeches were magic, but because some infections improve on their own. If you live long enough. The monk hums as he works. A low, steady drone. It actually helps. You drift into a strange half-sleep full of odd dreams, a samurai duel in a field of flowers, a laughing tanuki stealing your pants, and bizarrely, your fourth-grade math teacher demanding you explain the Tokugawa shogunate. You wake to find one leech curled in a jar, fat and red. Your fever's down slightly. The monk nods. Progress. But this is only the beginning. That evening, a village healer arrives. She's older, nearly bent in half, with hands like dry tree bark, and a breath that smells like roasted garlic and something fishy. She grinds something into a paste and smears it across your chest. It's cold and sticky. You are now an unwilling miso-marinated fever burrito. She chants softly. You're pretty sure none of it is medical, but you don't question it. She takes a small burning stick and waves it around your face. Moxie bustion, you realize. The ancient practice of burning dried mugwort close to the skin to stimulate healing. Or as it feels in the moment, extremely organized incense assault. Historians still argue whether traditional Japanese medicine had measurable success compared to contemporary Chinese methods, or whether most results were placebo plus rest. But one thing's clear, many lived longer than expected, thanks to herbs like shiso ginger and yamabuki bark. Later that night, your fever spikes again. This time, the hallucinations get weird. You dream of vending machines, air conditioning, gyoza, then Tom Cruise in a kimono glaring at you. You're doing it all wrong, he says. Rude Tom. You wake drenched, but slightly clearer. The tailor herself is there now, wiping your forehead with a damp cloth. She doesn't speak, just hums the same tune the monk did. Her kindness is quiet, practical. She leaves a bowl of porridge beside your bed, thin, plain, but divine. You sip slowly, the grains sticking to your tongue. A fly lands in it. You fish it out. Keep eating. In this world, you learn illness isn't just a physical burden, it's a social one. You're expected to either recover quickly or fade quietly. There's no concept of sick leave or urgent care. Your lucky people are helping you at all. If you were anyone else a drifter without a borrowed yukata or a faintly pitiful expression, you'd be left to rot. Here's your quirky tidbit of the day. During particularly bad flu seasons, some villagers would carry tiny charms shaped like frogs. Frogs, according to belief, could hop away illness. You'd wear it on a string or keep it near your bed. One child leaves one by your straw pillow. It's carved from walnut shell eyes painted with soot. It works. Or maybe the tea works. Or the chanting. Or the sheer stubbornness of your immune system clinging to survival. Either way, by day 3 you can sit up. By day 4 you can walk. You step out into the sun, blinking like you haven't seen light in a decade. Your knees wobble, your mouth is dry. But you're alive. A farmer nods at you as you pass. A nod, a promotion from being a cursed outsider. A nod means you've earned a sliver of local tolerance. You sit beside a stream and rinse your face. The water's freezing. Your reflection looks half human, half haunted. But your cheeks are pink and your eyes aren't sunken anymore. You made it. Barely. Feudal Japan. It doesn't give you sick days. It gives you tea leeches, questionable ointments, and maybe if you're lucky, a frog charm and a bowl of cold porridge. And if that's not enough, well, the village already knows a guy with a shovel. You're better. Not well exactly, more like not actively dying, which in feudal Japan counts as a major upgrade. You've stopped hallucinating anthropomorphic raccoons and can finally walk without wobbling like a broken marionette. Unfortunately, that means you're now useful again. The tailor's favor has run thin. You've been lounging in her shed for too many nights, and you can feel the shift in her eyes from poor sick thing to freeloader with warm blood. And in a society where rice is currency, kindness has a very strict expiration date. You're going to have to work. You figure this out around dawn when a stern farmer appears at the shed entrance, taps his hoe on the ground, and points to the horizon. Then to you. Then back to the horizon. It's not a metaphor. He's not offering you a vision quest. He means now. You follow still sluggish feet, barely wrapped in scraps of cloth. Geta sandals are a luxury. You're walking the muddy path in a pair of improvised footbags that make every step feel like stepping on soaked crackers. He leads you to a field, not rice this time, but dry land rows of daikon and greens. The job is simple: dig, pull, pile, repeat. You learn quickly that simple doesn't mean easy. The sun isn't even up yet, and you're already sweating. The hoe is heavy, the earth is stubborn, and the plants are somehow stronger than you. One daikon resists extraction with the force of a buried treasure chest. When you finally rip it free, you fall backward into a thorn bush. A boy nearby snickers. You don't blame him. Work in feudal Japan wasn't just labor, it was survival theater. Everyone was watching. Everyone had a role. If you worked too slowly, you were a burden. Too quickly, you were suspicious. If you tried to skip your turn, you might get shamed, scolded, or worse, ostracized. You start mimicking the others. Watch how they bend when they pause to stretch, how they use their body weight instead of brute strength. Eventually, you find a rhythm. Your muscles protest, but your mind adapts. Hours pass. Your hands blister. Your back screams. Your stomach perpetually hollow. Growls so loud a crow flies away in panic. Around midday, the field supervisor, a bony man with a voice like splintered bamboo, shouts something that sounds like Haima. Break time. Everyone gathers under the eaves of a shack. You sit on a rock and try to breathe without dying. A woman hands you a small ball of barley and sweet potato wrapped in a leaf. You nearly inhale it whole. She laughs gently. And here comes your historical fact: in rural farming communities, communal labor was essential. And breaks like this weren't just about rest, they were about maintaining social bonds. A lazy worker might be forgiven, an aloof one, never. You try to join the conversation. You gesture, smile, mimic sounds. A young man asks you something, maybe where you're from. You point vaguely to the mountains, then upward. Everyone laughs. One man claps your back so hard your teeth knock together. Apparently, sky country is either hilarious or an accepted euphemism for escaped lunatic. Still, you're included. For now. Back to work. The afternoon sun bakes your shoulders. You're dizzy, dry-mouthed. You ask for water with a panicked mime gesture that looks more like a drowning fish than a plea for hydration. Someone hands you a ladle of cool stream water. You drink too fast. Choke. Then cough it into your sleeve. Elegant as always. By sundown, your muscles have collapsed into a dull throb. The farmer gestures to the pile of daikon. You both bow, his deeper than yours, but that might be a spine issue, and he hands you a single dried persimmon. Your wages. You try not to look disappointed. A fruit the size of a deflated tennis ball is all that separates you from absolute collapse, but you eat it, savoring its leathery sweetness like it's a royal dessert. That night, you're offered a space in a communal shelter used by seasonal workers. It's a large wooden barn filled with sleeping mats, shared blankets, and the soft, steady sound of 40 people snoring in irregular unison. The scent is layered. Smoke, sweat, old rice, and the faint musk of goat. You settle into a corner. Someone tosses you a rice husk pillow. You whisper thanks. They grunt. Progress. Here's your quirky tidbit. Feudal laborers often believed that spirits Tsukumogami inhabited tools if they were overused or disrespected. Blades, hoes, even brooms. So every night, many workers would align their tools carefully, whispering thanks. You see one man bow slightly to his rake before laying it down. You nod and do the same with your hoe, just in case. You sleep and dream of escalators. The next day, it's more of the same. Labor sweat, hushed laughter behind your back. But no one shoves you. No one slaps you. One woman even corrects your grip on the hoe with a gentle tap, like a coach, not a critic. Still, you're disposable. At the end of the week, you're paid with a handful of barley, a strip of dried fish, and shockingly, a real sandal. Just one. You don't ask questions. You wear it proudly, mismatched feet and all. Historians still debate how much freedom day laborers really had in the Sengoku period. Some argue they were little more than seasonal serfs tied to the fields by debt and obligation. Others say these roles allowed rare mobility chances to travel, to learn, even to rise. You're mostly rising and falling into mud, but you're learning. Feudal Japan doesn't care how smart you were back home. It doesn't care about your GPA, your resume, your modern survival hacks. It cares how long you can stand, how hard you can dig, and whether you can keep up without making enemies. And you, somehow, you do. But let's not get cocky. It only takes one wrong glance, one insulted elder, or one samurai with a headache to send you right back to square one or square zero if you count the grave. You stink. There's no polite way to say it. You reek like a fermented scarecrow, mud, old sweat, burnt barley, and something faintly goat-like that might actually be goat. You catch your own scent while walking past a food stall, and even you flinch. It's not your fault. Hygiene in feudal Japan is complicated. On paper, it sounds promising. The Japanese have been bathing regularly since ancient times. Cleanliness is valued culturally and spiritually. But reality, that's another story. Especially for someone like you, broke filthy and not on anyone's priority bath list. You try to locate a bathhouse. Someone points you toward the edge of town near the river. You're not sure if it's directions to an actual onsen or just the spot where villagers wash socks. But you follow anyway, because honestly, you're at the bathe or be exercised point of personal hygiene. Eventually, you find it a small cento, a communal bathhouse made of timber and stone. Steam rises gently from behind its walls. There's a quiet hum of water voices splashing. For a moment, it feels like salvation. You approach the door. Pause. A small sign with stylized kanji hangs on the wall. You can't read it, but the curtain flaps are red with a bold Tang-Yu character, hot water. Good sign. You step inside. Immediately, every eye turns to you. There are 4 men, all local, shirtless, lounging towels folded on their heads like smug origami hats. They see your ragged yukata, your unmatched footwear, your wild foreign eyes, and they do not look impressed. Still, you remove your yukata, trying not to look like you're performing a nervous striptease. You clutch your undergarments and step toward the rinsing area. This is your first mistake. See, before entering the ofuro, the bath itself, you're expected to wash completely. Not splash, not rinse. Wash. There's a whole pre-bath ritual, wooden buckets, ladles, soap, or ash, and a meticulous scrubbing of every inch of your body. Only then do you step into the communal bath. You, in your desperate state, stumble past all of that and directly into the tub. Gasps. One man actually stands up. Another drops his towel. The temperature in the room spikes, and not just from the steam. You freeze, realize, slowly step out. One of the older men starts scolding you. You catch one word, kegare, impurity. Here's your historical fact in Japanese culture. Especially during the feudal era, impurity wasn't just dirt, it was spiritual. Bathhouses were semi-sacred spaces, especially in Buddhist regions, and entering unclean was a major offense. You're basically the equivalent of tracking dog poop into a temple. You bow. Deeply, repeatedly. You whisper sumimasen over and over. Not quite the right word, but close enough. Apology received. Barely. They let you stay after you scrub yourself so thoroughly, you feel like your skin might come off. And this is when you discover the bath itself is glorious. It's hot, but not the owy hot of a careless shower. This is bone-deep heat, healing heat. The kind that sinks into your muscles and melts the trauma of 12 mud-filled days. You close your eyes and feel for the first time in forever human, until someone clears their throat. You open your eyes. One of the men is frowning. He points to your armpit. You realize he's miming something. You're not sure what until another guy leans in and sniffs. Oh, you smell wrong. It's not just you stink. It's that you smell foreign, modern. The detergent in your old shirt. The synthetic fibers of your boxers. The deodorant you last applied 2 weeks ago that is now fermented into its final, most cursed form. Even after scrubbing, your scent lingers chemical, unfamiliar, unnatural. Here's your fringe tidbit. During the Edo period, samurai were known to keep sachets of powdered incense in their robes, so that their armor and even their sweat smelled refined. Scent wasn't just aesthetic. It was social standing. You smell like a lost dishwasher tablet. The men finish their bath and leave without saying a word. The silence feels heavy, like you ruined the mood in an invisible, pungent way. Later, you dry off with your yukata still damp and mildly rice-scented and step back into the cool air. You feel physically clean, but socially stained. Again. And let's not forget your feet. You've got calluses now, but underneath them are cracks and blisters half healed from your agricultural misadventures. You can feel each pebble, each stray splinter. You limp like a retired ninja. You try to find sandals again. You even consider stealing a pair until you remember that crime in this era doesn't end with a slap on the wrist. It ends with a wrist removed. Instead, you barter. A fish seller agrees to give you a pair of worn Waraji straw sandals in exchange for helping him clean fish for an hour. You accept. The work is messy, smelly, and alarmingly sharp. The fish stare at you with dead, judgmental eyes. The seller laughs at your squeamishness. Eventually, he hands over the sandals. They're damp. They itch, but they're yours. You put them on with all the pride of a man donning fine leather boots. Here's the scholarly debate for the day. Some historians believe communal baths were instrumental in shaping Japanese cultural values around cleanliness and community. Others argue that access was inconsistent, especially for the lower classes, and romanticizing them ignores the sharp class divides they reinforced. Either way, you experienced both sides today, the warmth and the cold stare of judgment. You walk home smelling like sulfur and soap slipping slightly in your wet Waraji. A child sniffs the air and shouts something that might mean ghost stew. You ignore it. You sleep that night under the stars, wrapped in your yukata sandals beside your head, like a makeshift security system. Your dreams are quiet. Your skin, for once, doesn't crawl. The bugs avoid you, perhaps out of respect. Or maybe they just don't like soap. It's early morning, and you're finally starting to feel slightly competent. Clean-ish, dressed-ish, and not actively collapsing every few steps. Your sandals no longer feel like straw cheese graters. You even made it through a breakfast of miso soup and pickled radish without crying from spice confusion. So naturally, this is when you're accused of a crime. You're not even sure what crime. 1 minute you're minding your own business, trying to mimic a fishmonger's graceful knife-work spoiler. You're very bad at it, and the next, a man is shouting and pointing at you like you just burned down his rice granary. A small wooden cup has gone missing. A common scratched-up thing you wouldn't look at twice. But you're holding one just like it, and that's enough. You try to explain, gesture wildly, offer the cup back, but it's too late. The accusation has left someone's mouth and entered the village's bloodstream like bad sake. A growing crowd surrounds you, and with every new face, your odds of walking away drop. Here's your historical fact. In many regions of feudal Japan, the justice system wasn't based on concrete evidence or even fair trials. It was built on communal reputation, confession, and shame. If you were accused, especially as an outsider, you were already halfway guilty. A constable arrives. He's lean-armored and looks permanently unimpressed. He surveys the situation, listens to the merchants shouting, and then glares at you. He doesn't ask you questions, he doesn't expect answers. Instead, he points to a post. Just a post. Then at you. A few people whisper, "Zani, public shame." Your blood turns cold. They drag you forward, not roughly, just firmly. Your protests mean nothing. A child throws a plum pit at your back. Déjà vu. You don't resist. Resistance would only escalate things. You're tied to the post by the wrist's ropes tight against your skin. It's not painful. Not yet. But it's humiliating. People pass by. Some laugh. Others tusk disapprovingly. One old man squints at you like he's trying to decide if you're cursed or just incredibly stupid. A group of kids start circling you, chanting something you can't understand. You think you hear Baka again. It's becoming your unofficial nickname. Someone draws a mustache on your cheek with charcoal. And here comes your quirky tidbit. In some regions, public shaming was preferred over imprisonment. It was quicker, more visible, and served as a community lesson. Common punishments included being displayed in stocks, being made to wear humiliating signs, or having your head shaved in awkward patterns. You're lucky, just a few hours of ridicule unless the merchant decides to press further. Eventually, the constable returns. He holds the actual missing cup found behind a barrel. Clearly misplaced, clearly not stolen. He shrugs, doesn't apologize, just cuts your ropes and walks off. That's it. No oops, no our bad. Just move on. The crowd disperses. Some look vaguely amused. A few seem disappointed you weren't punished more. The child with the plum pits glares at you like you've cheated him out of a good spectacle. You sit in the dirt, rubbing your raw wrists. And then something strange happens. A stranger, walks over and offers you a piece of dried squid. Not a word, just a small, chewy, salty gesture of solidarity. You accept it gratefully. It tastes like old rubber and ocean regret, but it's food, and it's kindness. You nod to her. She nods back. That's the entire exchange. Later that day, while helping haul firewood, a man asks about your wrists. You mime the whole ordeal. He laughs, slaps your back, and says something that sounds like Shogunai can't be helped. You repeat it. Shogunai. It rolls off the tongue like defeat wrapped in politeness. That night, someone from the bathhouse recognizes you. Not fondly. He warns others not to leave valuables out. You can tell. His tone is icy, and his side eye could curdle tofu. Your reputation now includes possibly steals, cups. Here's your scholarly debate. Some historians argue that feudal Japan's communal justice system was effective for the time, quick, socially reinforcing, and cost-free. Others claim it was a breeding ground for mob rule and scapegoating, especially toward outsiders, women, and the lower castes. Both perspectives have weight. You're living proof of how fragile fairness can be when everyone's already suspicious of you. You try to lay low after that. Work harder. Speak less. Bow more. Become smaller. But the village has a long memory. Your name, well, the noise people make when referring to you, becomes synonymous with confusion, bad luck, and possibly cup thief. You overhear someone using it to scold their dog. You want to defend yourself. Explain. But there are no words. For I was framed by a wooden cup and circumstantial clumsiness in the local dialect you haven't learned. So you chew your squid, bow your head, and survive. Because that's the game here. It's not about justice. It's about continuing. You hear it before you see it. The sound is sharp, shing like metal unsheathed across silk. Then comes the voice. Calm, measured, but low enough to quiet birds. Whatever it says, it ends with silence. The kind of silence that fills with dread. You peek around the wooden corner of the stall where you've been peeling daikon. In the village square, a man stands alone, framed by the afternoon light. His robe is ink black with a white family crest, like a whisper on his shoulder. Two swords rest at his side, a long katana and the shorter wakizashi. You don't need a degree in Japanese history to know what that means. Samurai, a real one. Not a drunk with a dull blade or some wannabe ronin hustling villages for rice. This man moves like precision itself, balanced, unhurried, and unmistakably dangerous. He's talking to a local elder, calmly, but you can see the way the elder bows, lower than usual, not out of respect, out of fear. The samurai nods once, then turns, and that's when it happens. You make eye contact. Not long, not dramatic, just a glance. But it's enough. He stops. You look away immediately. Stare hard at your daikon like it's suddenly fascinating. Slice, slice, slice. You try to blend in with the vegetables, but it's too late. Footsteps approach. Measured, steady. Sandals over packed earth. The kind of footsteps that never rush because they don't have to. A shadow falls over you. You look up. He says something short. A question. Your brain panics. You stammer sumimasen and arigato and possibly invent a new word. You bow, again and again. You are now a Boeing machine, fully automated, zero dignity. He watches you, head tilted slightly. Then his hand moves to his wakizashi. Not drawn, just resting, casually. It's worse than a threat. It's a reminder. See, samurai had the legal right to kill commoners on the spot for perceived slights, especially those who disrespected them. That right, kirasute gomen, literally means permission to cut down. And it wasn't some obscure technicality. It was used. Historians still argue how often samurai actually invoked this privilege. Some say it was rare, more bark than bite. Others point to scrolls and diaries filled with bloodshed over eye contact posture or improper speech tone. You meanwhile are currently living a worst-case scenario. He says another word. You catch yabo ambition. Or was it yabomono, a suspicious person? You raise your palms. Back away. Not too quickly, don't appear guilty. Not too slowly, don't seem defiant. Just the right level of pathetic. And then blessedly, he looks past you. At the daikon, he picks one up, studies it, nods. Then, miracle of miracles, he turns and walks away. You do not breathe for 15 seconds. A merchant nearby whispers kisho like it's a warning and a prayer. You ask someone what it means later. They say he serves the local lord, keeps the peace. A samurai bureaucrat, judge, jury, and if he's feeling dramatic, executioner. From then on, you avoid the square. You learn to move like a shadow, never ahead of anyone, never behind, just with. You bow often, speak rarely, and never ever look a samurai in the eye again. Here's your fringe tidbit. Some samurai would test the sharpness of their blades on condemned criminals, a practice called tame shigiri. They'd record how many bodies a sword could cut through. Some blades were marked 5 bodies deep. You're trying very hard not to be anyone's test subject. Still, the close call gives you a strange sort of reputation. A few villagers now see you not just as the clueless foreigner, but as the one who survived the look. Children imitate you, wide-eyed, bowing, pointing at radishes. It becomes a game. The man who met the sword with soup hands. You try to lean into it. You wave at a child. She runs away screaming. Okay, maybe don't lean too hard. And here's your scholarly debate of the day was, the samurai class truly noble and honor-bound, or were they just glorified enforcers with good PR and pointy sticks? Sources disagree. Bushido, the warrior code, was idealized after the fact. During the Sengoku era, survival often trumped honor, which means that samurai like your daikon judging visitor might smile at a child and decapitate a tax dodger an hour later. Later that week, you see him again, from a distance. He's training with 2 others in a field just outside the village. Their swords shimmer in the sun as they move through kata form drills. It's beautiful, terrifying. You watch from behind a tree heart pounding. Then he stops, looks in your direction. You duck. You never go back to that part of the village again. Some places are haunted. Others are just heavily patrolled. You've learned something critical here. You don't own your safety. You borrow it. And anyone with the right title can take it away with a glance and a flick of steel. So you stay small, stay quiet, and you slice your daikon with exceptional focus. You don't sleep. Not really. Oh, sure, you lie down. Your body gives out at the end of every grueling day, slumped on straw limbs, tangled muscles humming like bees in a jar. But sleep, that gentle drift into unconscious calm, feudal Japan doesn't offer that. What it offers is survival dozing. Tonight, your accommodations are a low-roofed Minshuku-style shelter on the edge of a rice field. Technically, it's meant for travelers, though traveler is generous. You're more like a tolerated stray. Still, someone said you could sleep there, and you've learned to accept charity without asking too many questions. Inside, the air is thick, too warm, too damp. The wood creaks. Every surface smells like smoke and seaweed. The only light seeps in from a candle stub, flickering shadows across the walls. You lie down next to two other men, neither of whom seems aware of the concept of personal space or silent breathing. And then there's the soundscape. First, snoring. Not normal snoring. These are ancient nasal symphonies, each breath a battle. One man wheezes like a deflating bellows. The other occasionally stops altogether, then explodes into a gasp so loud you flinch. Then rodents. You swear something just scuttled over your foot. You sit up. Nothing there. But in the silence, you hear tiny claws against wood. Tap, tap, scritch. Could be mice. Could be something less cute. Either way, they're sharing the room rent-free. Then coughing. From outside. Deep, wet, tubercular coughing. Someone's sick. Really sick. And in this era, even hearing that sound feels like catching it. You pull your yukata tight and try to meditate, or disassociate, or astral project somewhere with memory foam and functioning plumbing. You even try counting. But instead of sheep, you count sounds. 1, snore, 2, gasp, 3, rat, 4, sneeze, 5, roof drip, 6. Someone whispering outside, wait what you freeze. There's someone just beyond the wall, a muttered exchange. You hear the word bakemono monster, then laughter. You relax, just drunks probably, or a midnight snack run for pickled eggplant. Still, you don't sleep. Eventually your body gives in, and that's when the dream hits. You're in a Tokyo capsule hotel, warm, safe, scrolling your phone. Then the alarm on your iPhone, your long-lost dead weight of a phone, starts blaring. Except it's not an alarm. It's a rooster. You jolt awake to pre-dawn chaos. The room's other occupants are already stirring. One steps on your hand. The other belches in your face. Someone knocks over a basket of dried seaweed. And through it all, the rooster. Outside, perched on something invisible, screaming its tiny dinosaur heart out. You crawl out into the gray light. Your body hurts. Your back is worse. There is a kink in your neck that feels medieval in origin. And yet you survived the night. Barely. You head to the river to splash water on your face, passing another communal shelter. The door is ajar. Inside, a family of 5, all crammed together on a straw mat, sleeping like kittens in a box. One of the kids is drooling on his brother's arm. You smile, until you realize there are lice combs by the door. Right. Let's talk about pests. Feudal sleeping quarters were an open invitation to anything small and parasitic. Lice, fleas, bedbugs, mosquitoes. If it had more legs than you and less shame, it was sharing your bedding. And while the Japanese did practice cleaning and combing, even the most fastidious villager couldn't ward off every infestation. Your scalp itches again. You pretend it's psychosomatic. Here's your historical fact in the Sengoku period. Villages often shared single sleeping rooms during seasonal labor surges. Bedding, if you had it, was straw or futon-style mats stuffed with dried grass. Personal space. Not a concept. Sleep posture. Usually curled into a comma to avoid the draft sneaking through paper walls. And yes, you're still in the same yukata you wore during that awkward half-bath incident. It's stiff now, and a little sticky in the armpits. You vow to rinse it today. Maybe. If the river's not already full of cabbage, your quirky detail of the day, people in some rural areas used silkworm cocoons as makeshift earplugs during loud seasonal festivals or to sleep through snoring relatives. Too bad you don't have silkworms, or relatives, or cotton. Later, while helping chop kindling near the smithy, you mention your sleepless night with exaggerated yawns and mime-heavy storytelling. One man laughs and pats you on the back. Then he points at your forehead. You've got a flea bite. Center stage. Lovely. You spend the rest of the day exhausted. You nod off while grinding grain. You nearly drop a basket into the fire pit. At one point you fall asleep standing up, leaning against a shed, only to be startled awake by a goat nudging your hip. Sleep-deprived, itchy, and smelling like wood smoke and despair. You start to wonder, how did anyone function like this? Here's the scholarly debate: was feudal sleep really that bad? Some historians argue the Japanese segmented their sleep 2 shifts, with a period of wakefulness in the middle for prayers, small talk, or checking on animals. Others suggest that villagers were so physically exhausted from labor that they could sleep anywhere, anytime, regardless of conditions. You are clearly not one of those villagers. That night, you're offered a spot in a different hut. A little quieter. Only 2 people this time. One snores like a flute. The other drools silently. It's an improvement. You curl up in your corner, scratching at invisible bugs and praying no one accuses you of theft, heresy, or looking weird tomorrow. You close your eyes. Then the rooster crows again. You whisper a very soft, very modern curse word. No one hears. But the fleas definitely agree. Your day starts the way too many have lately: exhausted, itchy, and trying to pretend your straw mat is a mattress and not a failed scarecrow. But today, you're determined to blend in better. No more suspicious daikon incidents. No more being chased by chickens. No more whatever yesterday was. You brush your hair with your fingers, straighten your faded yukata, and trudge out toward the village center. There's a buzz in the air, a kind of excited tension you haven't felt before. People are moving with purpose, sweeping thresholds, adjusting banners, carrying little bundles of something wrapped in cloth. A festival, no. Something more solemn. You spot villagers kneeling beside a wooden path laid with fresh straw. Children are told to hush. Everyone's dressed just a little nicer. Even the goats look confused. You spot the monk you remember from your fever days and gesture a question with your eyes. He smiles faintly and says a single word: Mikado. The emperor: no way. You're not that lucky. Or unlucky. You follow the flow of people toward the small forest shrine on the hill. Their incense curls into the air. Offerings are being placed: rice, sake, small bundles of herbs. The villagers bow deeply, foreheads to the earth. You do the same, a little too enthusiastically. Your face hits the ground with a thump. You taste dirt and dignity. As you sit back up, you notice others glancing sideways at you. Not quite angry, just puzzled. Then a soft gasp. You realize too late what you've done. In your effort to copy the deepest bow, you pointed your feet, bare-cracked, possibly fungal, toward the shintai, the sacred object of the shrine. It might be a mirror or a sword or a very old tree behind the building, but it doesn't matter. You just disrespected something sacred with your toes. Cue scandal. A few murmurs ripple through the crowd. The shrine keeper, a lean man with paper charms tucked into his belt, approaches. He doesn't yell. He doesn't gesture. He simply stands in front of you, still as a scroll, and says one phrase, Kagare. There's that word again. Impurity. You bow again. Too low. Too late. Here's your historical fact in Shinto practice. Purity isn't just about physical cleanliness, it's spiritual. Feet, blood, death, and certain bodily states, you can guess, were considered kagare and needed cleansing rituals. Stepping into the wrong space with dirty feet could desecrate a shrine. You just did that. In public. Someone hands you a small branch of white paper strips gohei. You recognize it from your fever dreams and maybe one episode of a travel documentary. You hold it awkwardly, unsure if it's a peace offering or a purification tool or both. The shrine keeper directs you to a side basin, a temazuya. There's a ladle water flowing from a bamboo pipe and a few very pointed glances from the locals. You scrub your hands, then your mouth. You're about to wash your feet when someone grabs your shoulder and stops you. Nope, too far. That water is sacred. Not for your questionable sandals. You mumble sumimasen over and over and back away. But the damage is done. Later, at a communal meal, you're served last. You notice it. No one's being cruel. No one's saying anything. But bowls are passed with less eye contact. Your cup of tea is lukewarm. Someone subtly slides the pickled plum away from your tray, like it might absorb your unclean aura. You've become spiritually awkward. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some regions, people believed stepping over a kamadana, a household altar, could bring years of misfortune. Some superstitions claimed even looking at sacred objects during impurity could summon illness. You, sir, have gone full bingo card, looked bowed, wrong, pointed feet, and probably had lice. Even the goats would gossip if they could. So you decide to make amends. That evening, you visit the shrine again quietly, humbly, when the crowd is gone. You bring an offering, the only thing you own that feels vaguely ceremonial. Your one good sandal. You place it beside the torii gate. Bow deeply. Left over right. You whisper, "I don't know what I'm doing," in English. The trees rustle as if amused. You sit there a while, just breathing. And here's your scholarly debate. Some argue that Shinto, being animist at its core, adapted constantly to local practices, making offenses flexible. Others say certain rituals, especially around shrines, were strict and enforced harshly. The truth likely lies in the middle. Locals enforced tradition more with gossip and distance than punishment. You're feeling that now. Not exile, but exclusion. The next day, the sandal is gone, but on the shrine steps is a small rice cracker, wrapped in lotus leaf, not addressed, but clearly left. You take it. Bow. Lesson learned in feudal Japan, the gods don't scream. They shun. And if you want to sleep tonight, you better keep your toes to yourself. Rain. Not the gentle, poetic kind, with soft pattering on rooftops and the faint smell of wet earth. No. This is war rain. Angry sky gods level downpour. The kind that hits sideways, seeps through wood, and turns every road into a muddy slip and slide for ox carts. You're soaked within seconds. Your waraji sandals disintegrate almost immediately. Wet straw has the structural integrity of wet tissue. You try to trudge along the road, but every step is a gamble between forward and faceplant. Villagers pass by in conical straw hats and cloaks that look like someone skinned a haystack. You've got a thin yukata and a prayer. You duck under the overhang of a tea house, hoping for shelter. Inside, a small fire glows. A few travelers huddle near it, sipping broth and trying not to acknowledge each other. You consider asking for a place near the warmth, but your last few ask for help moments didn't exactly win you any fans. Still, you try. Step inside. Bow. Hold your hands up, palms open. Universal language of, "Please don't stab me, I'm just cold." The innkeeper frowns. She looks you up and down, dripping, shivering foreign, and sighs. She gestures to the back wall. The wet corner. You sit. The warmth doesn't reach you, but at least the rain's not hitting your face anymore. A man near the fire sneezes, loudly, and again. You eye him, then everyone else. One woman has a cloth tied over her face, not for style, but survival. Someone coughs into their sleeve and murmurs something about kaze. You've heard that word before. Cold, maybe flu, possibly plague. You subtly scoot closer to the door. Here's your historical fact. Feudal Japan, particularly during the Sengoku and Edo periods, endured numerous outbreaks of disease, many seasonal, some deadly. Without modern understanding of germ theory, communities relied on ritual isolation and the occasional burning of homes to prevent spread. Yes, burning. You spend the next few hours trying not to breathe too deeply. The storm doesn't let up. Thunder rumbles like a warning drum. A gust of wind tears through the eaves, scattering coals. Everyone jumps. A man throws a mat over the door. Someone lights a new fire with practiced speed. And you try to dry your yukata with your breath. Eventually, the rain eases into a whisper. People shuffle out. You follow soggy and unsure, stepping into what is now a swamp, formerly known as a road. Then the cold sets in. The temperature drops fast. Your damp clothing clings like a curse. Your skin prickles. Your fingers ache. You forgot how painful being cold can be, deep, biting, all-consuming. By sundown, frost gathers on the tall grass. You found a stretch of pine trees to shelter under. No roof, no fire. Just a slight dryness where roots curve above ground. You curl into yourself like a dying lizard. And here's where it gets worse. The villagers don't want you back inside. Not because they're cruel, but because you're wet, you're shivering, and they just saw you near someone sneezing. That's 3 strikes. One old man offers you a straw mat, but not entry. You nod. You thank him. Then you return to the trees. Historians still debate how villagers in pre-modern Japan balanced compassion with communal survival. During hard seasons, resources were scarce. Sometimes the vulnerable were protected. Other times they were politely abandoned. Tonight you are politely abandoned. Your quirky tidbit. There were snow huts in the North Kamakura, where people would huddle together in igloo-shaped shelters. Warmth was shared sometimes with candles. The irony is painful. You'd sell your last rice grain for one right now. Instead, you huddle beneath your straw mat, wind whistling through the pines, frost forming on your eyelashes. You try to think warm thoughts, blankets, soup, hot packs, Netflix. But each image feels distant, dreamlike. Eventually, your body gives up. Sleep becomes less a choice and more a survival tactic. You drift. You wake coughing. It's still dark. Your mouth is dry. Your breath hangs in the air like smoke. You curl tighter. And then footsteps. A boy, maybe 12, holding a candle in a hollowed-out gourd. He sets something beside you, a cloth bundle. Hot stones wrapped in wool. He bows, then runs. You don't cry, but it's close. You press the stones to your chest, your fingers, your stomach. Slowly the chill retreats. Not far, but enough. The next morning, frost still clings to the grass. Your limbs are stiff, but you stand. you stand. Feudal Japan doesn't care about your comfort. It doesn't pause the weather for foreign weakness, but sometimes rarely it sends a boy with hot stones. That's enough to keep going. It starts with drums, not loud, not military, but steady like a heartbeat you didn't know you were waiting for. A soft dawn. Dawn. Dawn echoing down the narrow streets just after dawn. You blink awake beneath a borrowed blanket and stiff straw mat. The boy with the hot stones never came back, but someone else must have noticed, because this morning there's a rice ball and a single salted plum by your feet. It's still warm. You whisper arigato to no one in particular. Then the drums pick up pace. You climb out from under your makeshift shelter joints, cracking like dry bamboo. Others are already on the move. People filing toward the center of the village. Children, giddy men in their slightly cleaner work robes, women wrapping bright sashes around their waists. You follow. A festival you hope. A funeral less fun. You catch snippets of conversation bugaku mawashi kamihana. You don't understand all of it, but you hear the word kami again, gods. Spirits. Something sacred. And then you see it, the parade. Or what counts for one in a small village with more mud than money. A line of dancers in painted masks, their robes fluttering like faded banners. Each mask is different: crimson demons, wrinkled elders, sly foxes with golden eyes. They sway and step in rhythm with the drums. Behind them, someone juggles pine cones. Not well, but it counts. You settle in among the spectators. No one shoves you away. A woman even hands you a dried persimmon without breaking eye contact. It's either an offering or a test. You bow, chew, nod with what you hope is appropriate solemnity. And here's your historical fact: seasonal festivals were integral to rural Japanese life. Called Matsuri, they honored local deities, celebrated harvests, marked the changing of seasons. They blended Shinto rites with folk magic and community bonding. There were rituals for good crops, for warding off disease, for protecting children. For some villagers, these were the only breaks from backbreaking monotony. A performer approaches wearing a deer mask with long, real antlers. He moves slowly, bowing low, shaking a rattle made of clamshells. The crowd parts as he circles. Then suddenly he stops in front of you. Oh no. He raises the rattle, shakes it once, twice, then tosses a pinch of rice at your feet. Everyone laughs. You've just been cleansed. Your crime, probably your face, or your aura, or your deeply suspicious posture. But this is good. Mocking, yes, but friendly mocking. You're part of the joke, not the punchline. You bow. He nods and moves on. You get it now. The festival isn't just about the gods, it's about relief. Laughter in a culture where smiling too often might be seen as frivolous. Play in a place where play is rare. It's permission to relax. Temporarily. Here's your quirky tidbit. During certain spring festivals, villagers would carry portable shrines, mikoshi, through the streets, shaking them violently to wake up the spirits inside. Sometimes they'd rock them so hard, the deity was believed to become tipsy, bringing extra blessings. Sacred day drinking. Love it. By midday, the energy has shifted. Food stalls appear like mushrooms after rain. Grilled mochi on sticks, sweet bean buns, pickled cucumbers wrapped in leaves. You trade 2 hours of helping with firewood for one grilled fish skewer. It's greasy, salty, and nearly makes you weep with joy. A group of children pull you toward a game, throwing rocks at a row of gourds balanced on sticks. You miss every time. One lands on your foot. They cackle and nickname you Bakemono To. It sticks. Some of the older villagers recognize you now. Not fondly, but not with fear either. They nod as you pass. One man mimics your awkward bow from the shrine incident. Another hands you a paper fan and says, "You'll need this when the gods start dancing again." And here's the scholarly debate. Some anthropologists argue that rural Matsuri were deeply hierarchical, reinforcing caste roles and excluding lower outcasts, burakumin, and itinerants. Others claim they were the great equalizer, letting farmers dance beside their landlords, at least for a day. The truth, probably both, depending on who was dancing and who was watching. Late afternoon, the drums fade. The dancers retreat. The masks are placed in a shrine box, their painted eyes staring at you as if to say, "Don't get too comfortable." A priest chants softly, placing an offering on a stone altar, 3 cups of sake, a fish, and a fresh daikon. You do not steal it. Growth, the people bow. The crowd thins, the mud remains. You help sweep up discarded leaves and broken fan sticks. No one asks you to. You just do it. And by now, that earns a few approving glances. A small girl even hands you a flower. It's wilting, half crushed, but it's a gift, and you tuck it into your sash like a badge of survival. You sleep better that night. Not well, but better. Because for the first time since arriving, you weren't invisible. You weren't a mistake in the background. You were part of the dance. Even if it was as the awkward ghost with weird toes. You've barely finished sweeping up the last of the festival debris when a sharp clang rings out from the temple bell. A different tone this time, urgent, metallic, anxious. The kind of sound that doesn't invite you to dance or eat grilled mochi but tells you someone's goat got stolen or the rice paddies are flooding. You freeze, broom in hand. A young man rushes past, yelling something that makes every older villager stiffen. You catch one word, bakufu. Uh-oh. See, the bakufu isn't a neighbor or a town official. It's the military government. And if someone's yelling that word, it means samurai are on the way. Not the nice kind who write poems under cherry trees either. The tax-collecting, debt-enforcing, order-keeping kind. The smile wrong and lose a tooth kind. You're not ready, but they're already here. 3 riders appear at the edge of the road, their horses kicking up dry clouds of dust. Armor clinks. The one in front wears a lacquered cuirass, shaped to look like rippling muscle. His mustache has its own swagger. His eyes scan the crowd like he's selecting ingredients for a soup he doesn't even like. Everyone bows, you keep bowing, no one moves. Silence. And then he speaks calmly, dangerously. Something about missing grain taxes, a local blacksmith, a record of tools unaccounted for. You don't understand most of it, but it's clear that someone's in trouble. You just hope it isn't you. Your historical fact for the day. During the Tokugawa period, samurai weren't just warriors. They were administrators, tax collectors, and enforcers. Most peasants rarely saw battle, but they definitely saw bureaucracy and the sharp end of a sword if they got caught cheating the system. Samurai upheld the rigid caste order, and stepping out of line intentionally or not could cost a lot more than pride. One of the soldiers points at a villager's stall. A basket of millet. Then another points at you. Your stomach drops into your socks. Apparently, you're the suspicious foreigner who helped carry the firewood, who got free fish, who joined the festival, who didn't bow low enough. They dismount. You panic. You attempt a very clumsy, very deep bow. Too deep. You lose your balance and slam your forehead against the ground with a thud. The villagers flinch. The samurai raise eyebrows. One of them grunts. Another chuckles a small mercy. You're clearly not worth beheading. Not today anyway. Instead, they make you help unload crates from a cart, wooden boxes filled with scrolls, documents, and what smells suspiciously like dried squid. Your punishment is labor. you'll take it. As you lift the first box, a scholarly-looking retainer explains in surprisingly clear Japanese that the government has arrived to audit the shrine records and collect grain stores owed from last season. Nothing dramatic, just paper protocol and power flexing in real time. You nod like you understand. You don't. But here's a quirky detail. Not all samurai were rich or noble. By the late Edo period, many lower-ranking samurai were practically broke, carrying swords, but living in cramped townhouses, sometimes taking jobs as teachers, scribes, or even bodyguards for merchants. The title was prestigious, but the paycheck not always so much. That guy who just made you scrub horse droppings off his saddle, he might be living off rice stipends, smaller than a school teacher's salary. Hours pass. You finish the crates. They leave. Tension drains from the village like water through a cracked jug. The blacksmith wipes sweat from his brow. The head woman sighs like she's been holding her breath all year. No arrests today, no confiscations, just the usual intimidation ritual. And here's the scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether the Tokugawa peace, Pax Tokugawa if you will, was truly stable and benevolent, or just a slow-burning pressure cooker. Some say the system brought lasting order, improved roads, and fostered a flourishing culture. Others point to censorship, class immobility, and how even minor dissent could be crushed with impunity. Maybe both are true. Maybe the calm was just really well policed. That night, you sit by the fire trying not to replay the sound of hooves on dry earth. A farmer hands you a rice ball and says, "They didn't kill you. That's good." You nod. It is good. For now. Because next time, who knows? You're starting to smell smoke again. Not the comforting, crackling kind from last night's hearth. No, this is bad smoke. Acrid, fast-moving, and loud because it's joined by shouting. Not festival shouting. Not the goats loose again shouting. Panicked shouting. You scramble to your feet from the pile of old rice sacks that's become your unofficial bed. The air outside is thick and dark. Flames flicker above the rooftops of a nearby row of homes. A thatched roof collapses with a roar like a falling wave. You blink, coughing. Someone grabs your arm and yells, "Kaji fire." Oh, of course. Fire, because feudal Japan was basically a box of kindling pretending to be a civilization. Wooden homes, paper walls, straw roofs, lanterns everywhere. No fire department, no water pressure, no fire-resistant anything. You start running because everyone else is. Villagers form a ragged bucket line. Wooden pails fly hand to hand, splashing more people than flames. Children cry, dogs bark. A woman screams for her missing mother. It's chaos. And here's your historical fact. Fires were constant threats in Edo period Japan. The city of Edo itself was nicknamed the City of Fires due to frequent conflagrations. Entire neighborhoods could burn down in a single afternoon. Some villages held weekly fire drills with bells, prayer flags, and buckets at the ready. You grab a pail. It's heavier than you expect. You toss water at a wall already eaten by flames. It does nothing. Another villager points toward a shed not yet engulfed and yells a word that probably means salvage. You follow, stumbling through smoke. Inside are tools, rope, and bags of something grainy. You hoist one onto your back and drag it out coughing all the way. Outside, two men take the sack from you, bow once, and vanish into the chaos. You've helped. A little, you think. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Edo period houses had fire charms written on paper and pasted to doorposts. Others kept jars of pickled plums near the entrance, believing their strong smell might somehow ward off fire spirits. No one knows if that worked, but hey, desperate times. A gust of wind shifts the fire line. Sparks shoot into the sky like vengeful fireflies. The building across from you, one of the smaller storehouses, catches instantly. A group of villagers scream and fall back. A man trips. You grab his hand and help him up. He nods quickly, says something breathless, and then vanishes into the smoke. You sit down, just for a second, just to breathe. Your legs are trembling. Ash rains like snow. You cough into your sleeve and pray it doesn't turn red. Later, once the fire is finally out, smothered by exhaustion, more than strategy, you stand among the ruin. Half the village is blackened. The air still smells like charcoal and regret and silence. Not peaceful silence, stunned silence. The kind that settles over people who've lost more than they're ready to say. You help dig through wreckage. Someone finds a scorched lacquer box. Another pulls out a half-melted comb. A boy weeps quietly holding a charred wooden doll. Here's your scholarly debate. Some historians argue that these fires were turning points, forcing innovation in architecture and encouraging more fireproof construction. Others argue the fires were used politically, clearing land for authority figures to restructure communities. A few conspiracy theories even claim arson for policy, as in, let's just let that neighborhood go. You'll never know what started this one. A cooking fire, a lantern, a child with curiosity and poor judgment. Doesn't matter now. That night you sleep near the fields beside others with nowhere else to go. The stars above are indifferent. The cold is less sharp, but only because you're too tired to feel much. Still, someone passes around hot broth. You sip. You don't speak. Because tonight, words are ash too. By now, your body has officially joined the 1500s. The blisters on your hands are permanent residents. Your back pops every time you stand. And your diet has settled into a dependable routine of whatever's left. But worse than the physical wear is the slow, gnawing anxiety of not knowing what comes next. Because today, it's not fire or rain or lice. Today, it's taxes. You wake to the smell of burnt straw and damp earth. The sky is gray and heavy, as if even the clouds are avoiding eye contact. Villagers are gathering near the headwoman's house. You shuffle closer, your sandals squelching in the ash-dusted mud. There they are again, the samurai. Not the ones from last week. These ones are younger, cleaner, more official. They're accompanied by a scribe who looks like he's been inhaling ink since childhood, and a pair of servants carrying scrolls thicker than tree trunks. This is a tax inspection. Here's your historical fact. During the Edo period, villages paid their taxes primarily in rice koku, a unit equivalent to what one person eats in a year. Villagers had to produce enough not only to survive, but to meet their quota. That quota not negotiable. You don't have rice. You don't even have your name on the local registry. So when the samurai begin reading off household names, checking off harvest yields and temple records, you try to blend into the background like a very quiet gourd. But it's no use. Someone gestures vaguely in your direction. You catch a word you've come to dread: yabamono, suspicious person. Again. The tax scribe looks you over, then speaks softly to the samurai beside him. They debate for a moment, then nod. You're approached not with weapons, but with paperwork. You're being questioned. Why are you here? What's your purpose? What's your origin? You stammer. You gesture to the sky, to the fields, to the mud on your robes. You invent a name, Taro. It's the only one you remember from a scroll you saw at the shrine. No one buys it, but they don't stop you either. Eventually, you're waved off. Not cleared, just set aside. like a broken bowl someone might fix later. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some rural villagers desperate to avoid high taxes buried part of their rice yields in hidden forest caches or forgot to till certain plots. Others bribed temple scribes to undercount their land. The punishment, if caught, public beatings. Or worse, your land taken and redistributed. Later you watch as villagers offer their bundles. Some kneel and press their foreheads to the earth. Others are stiff with resentment. One man hesitates too long. His daughter quietly adds another handful of rice to the bundle. The scribe frowns, but says nothing. You help carry a few sacks to the collection shed, trying not to look at how small the harvest is this year. Too much rain, too much fire, too many bugs. The sacks sag like tired shoulders. As you pass the shrine, the local priest steps out and pours a cup of sake onto the ground, an offering to the harvest kami. He glances at you and for the first time does not frown. You nod. Progress. But here's the scholarly debate. Some researchers argue the Tokugawa tax system maintained peace and economic stability for centuries. Others argue it strangled rural innovation, locking farmers into cycles of debt, disaster, and dependency. In other words, the same sack of rice could mean stability or slow suffocation, depending on who collected it. That night, the village is quiet. Too quiet. You sense the tension beneath the calm men calculating how much food they have left. Women counting cloth scraps, planning trades. Children pretending not to notice the rice pot is thinner than usual. And you sit beside an old woman weaving straw sandals and try to make yourself useful. She doesn't speak, but she hands you one. Half finished. You pick up where she left off. It's enough. Tomorrow the samurai will leave, with your village's food, your peace of mind, and the unshakable understanding that here nothing is really yours, not even your name. You are now officially, undeniably hungry. Not I skipped lunch hungry. Not I could really go for a snack hungry. We're talking hollow-cheeked, lightheaded, can't remember what a full stomach feels like hungry. Your ribs are a xylophone. You would marry a sweet potato if one proposed. It's been 3 days since your last real meal. The rice has been rationed, the pickles are gone, and even the children have stopped pretending that tree bark is a fun snack. There's talk of stretching the next harvest with millet gruel, which based on texture alone, is like eating regret in porridge form. And yet the work doesn't stop. If anything, it gets harder. You're handed a hoe and sent into the fields again, your 5th rotation in the past 2 weeks. This time it's a weedy patch at the edge of the rice paddies where the soil is more rock than dirt. The other workers don't talk. Their faces are gray with exhaustion. No one jokes. No one sings. The village's mood has shifted from survival to endurance. You pause to stretch your aching back and spot a man chewing on something. It's green, stringy, and pulled straight from the edge of the irrigation ditch. He offers you a piece. You chew. It's bitter, slimy, but vaguely edible. You don't ask what it is. You don't want to know. Here's your historical fact: famine wasn't rare in feudal Japan. Poor harvests, typhoons, or overtaxation could quickly turn a hungry season into catastrophe. Villagers resorted to foraging wild roots, bark, and even clay-rich soil in desperate times. In some regions, entire families died quietly, too proud or ashamed to beg. You're not proud. You'd beg. But no one here has anything to give. Later that day, you help repair a damaged granary wall. Inside, you can hear the rustle of stored grain, just enough to see the winter through. You try not to think about it. Try not to want it. But the knowledge eats at you harder than the hunger. You leave a thumbprint on the wood. Not theft, just proof you were close. Then you're sent to the stream to wash tools. The water is icy and your hands go numb instantly. You pause, crouching in the shallows, and spot a flicker beneath the surface. Fish. Tiny. Fast. You freeze. Watch. Wait. You plunge your hands in. You miss. Twice. But on the third try, you actually grab it. A twitching, slippery miracle. You don't scream. You don't laugh. You just hold it like treasure. You wrap it in leaves and hide it beneath your robe. Tonight you'll eat. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some villagers believed catching a fish on a fast day, days when meat was forbidden, would bring bad luck, unless you whispered an apology to the river kami first. You whisper it twice, just to be safe. That evening you sneak behind the granary, light a few dried pine needles, and roast your fish over the embers. You eat it whole, bones and all. It's not delicious. It's life. That's enough. And here's your scholarly debate. Did the rigid rice-based economy cause more famine than it prevented? Some historians argue that forcing every village to prioritize tax rice over subsistence farming made them vulnerable to even slight disruptions. Others say the system ensured at least a minimum order, without which chaos would have reigned. You chewing scales in the dark have your own opinion. The next morning, you wake with stomach cramps, but satisfied. Your neighbors don't ask why you look a little more alive. One woman even hands you a single roasted chestnut. You nearly cry. No one has enough. But sometimes they still give. In this world, generosity is the bravest rebellion. It's market day. Not in the way you're used to, no plastic signs, no rows of produce gleaming under fluorescent lights. This is an open patch of dirt just beyond the village gates, lined with woven mats, wooden carts, and the occasional confused chicken. A dozen vendors at most. And you. You're here because you've been told this is the only place to trade for winter cloth. You arrive early, clutching your offering like it might vanish: 2 bundles of firewood, dried perfectly straight, and a carved spoon you spent 2 nights whittling. You're not sure if any of it is valuable, but it's what you have. Others arrive. Some from your village. Some from nearby hamlets you've only heard mentioned in hushed gossip. Everyone's bundled in faded cotton or patched hemp robes. One man wears sandals made entirely of twine and ambition. There's energy in the air. It's the closest thing to buzz this world allows. Kids dart between stalls, elders haggle with quiet intensity, and a toothless woman hums a song you half recognize from the last festival. Your first stop, the cloth stall. You bow. The merchant, a wiry man with half an eyebrow and 0 patience, eyes your bundle. He snorts. No silk, just hemp, no dye. You nod. He takes your firewood, then studies the spoon. He turns it over once, twice, then shrugs. Too smooth, he mutters. Too smooth, apparently that's a bad thing. He tosses you a small square of cloth. Rough, stiff, and definitely pre-owned. But it's yours now. You bow deeply, thank him, and try not to wince as you tuck it into your sash. Here's your historical fact. Most people in feudal Japan wore garments made of hemp or cotton dyed with natural indigo ozone. Silk was reserved for the upper classes. Clothing was recycled, endlessly mended, patched, and passed down. Fabric was currency, insulation, status, and identity all at once. You make your way to the pottery stall next. The vendor is young. Too young. Probably apprenticing. He offers a chipped bowl in exchange for the spoon. You take it, and for a moment it feels like a fair deal, until the bowl cracks in your hand 10 minutes later. Heat glued, not kiln fired. You've been scammed. Welcome to the real economy. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some regions, there were unwritten fairness rules. At markets, locals wouldn't cheat one another openly. But outsiders, fair game. especially ones who show up barefoot, nervous, and clearly unfamiliar with how much a single pickled radish should cost. You keep going. You trade one old sandal for a few dried beans. A basket weave lesson earns you half a sweet potato. Someone offers you a fermented egg in exchange for an hour hauling buckets. You agree, instantly regret it. But the egg, glorious. By midday, your hands are numb from cold and bartering, but your sash is heavier. A cracked bowl, 2 tiny turnips, a fist-sized cloth, and a smile from a grandmother who insists on feeding you a rice ball with paste, so you don't faint in front of the daikon again. You've started to understand the rhythm of it now. Quiet exchanges, subtle nods, the hierarchy of need versus generosity. No one's rich, no one's safe, but there's a strange dignity in how everyone shows up anyway. Then you hear shouting. It's not panic. It's price fighting, 2 men arguing over a dried fish that looks older than your modern toothbrush. A small crowd forms. You edge closer, curious. That's when you see the samurai. Again. One of them gestures toward the argument. He doesn't speak loudly. He doesn't need to. The 2 men fall silent immediately. The crowd backs away. The samurai walks up, picks up the fish, examines it, then tosses a single coin to the ground between them. Decision made. No one objects. You don't either. Here's the scholarly debate. Were samurai enforcers of order at village markets or disruptors who reminded everyone who really held power? Some records suggest they protected trade routes and prevented exploitation. Others say their presence was more performative, an arm of control to keep commerce from empowering the lower classes too much. You've seen enough to suspect both. You trade your last item, a worn cord from your waist, for a piece of grilled tofu. Crispy edges, warm center. You take a bite and let the salt coat your tongue like medicine. Walking home, your feet ache. But you're not empty-handed. You're not invisible. And maybe that's worth more than cloth. Winter isn't coming. It's here. You wake to a silence so complete it feels like the world forgot how to breathe. Your breath curls in the air before your face. The straw mat beneath you is brittle with frost. You flex your fingers, they creak like old floorboards, and sit up slowly. Outside, the ground has turned to stone. The fields are white. Not the charming, fluffy snow from movies. This is slush, slick, ankle-snapping frost that sinks deep into your bones and stays there. The wind doesn't howl. It whispers cold and smug, sliding through every crack in the hut's paper walls. You wrap yourself in the rough cloth you traded for at the market. Its stiff smells faintly of pickled radish and barely covers one shoulder. Still, it's something. You shuffle outside and immediately regret it. The first step sends a spike of cold straight up your heel. Your second step slips. You nearly meet the ground with your forehead again, but catch yourself with a graceless flail. So now your palms hurt, your knees are wet, and your pride is hibernating. You join the others at the morning fire. If summer was labor, winter is survival. There's less food, less work, and fewer distractions. The villagers don't speak much now. They huddle in small groups, sharing warmth like embers in a dying hearth. You learn to ration not just food, but conversation, smiles, hope. Here's your historical fact. Winter in feudal Japan was brutal, especially for peasants. While the elite might enjoy hot baths and quilted silks, villagers relied on shared fires, layered hemp robes, and portable charcoal braziers called hibachi. Houses were drafty windows, just paper, and insulation a fantasy. You try your best. You help gather firewood. You break ice to fetch water. You patch holes in roofs with thatch that doesn't really want to stay patched. One morning, you even attempt to warm your sandals by stuffing them with straw. It works. Briefly. Until a mouse takes the straw back. You don't even blame him. By midday, you're asked to help with miso paste stirring. It's a grimy, repetitive job, but it smells incredible, rich, savory, alive. You lose yourself in the rhythm, stirring the thick brown mass in a barrel until your arms ache and your nose runs from the steam. One of the women watching says something in a teasing tone. The others laugh. You don't understand the joke, but you smile anyway. And then someone hands you a bowl. Hot miso soup. Tiny cubes of tofu. A single sliver of carrot. It tastes like civilization. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Japanese villagers used heated stones wrapped in cloth to warm their bedding. Others placed charcoal braziers under low wooden tables covered in blankets called kotatsu, and practically lived under them for the season. You tragically have neither stones nor table, but you do try to nap near a fire pit, nose twitching like a squirrel. At night, the village is silent, but for creaking wood and the occasional cough. The stars look close enough to touch, and yet warmth feels galaxies away. You wake once to someone crying, quiet, muffled. You don't ask why. You just shift closer, letting your shoulder brush theirs, and offer the last bite of your pickled turnip. That's how you survive winter here. Not by hoarding, by huddling. And here's the scholarly debate. Was the rural Japanese winter a time of rest or suffering? Some argue the break from farming allowed for social bonding, storytelling, and domestic crafts. Others say it was the season most likely to claim the weak, the old, and the unlucky. The truth, likely both. Like everything here, it depended on what you had, or who you lost. One morning, the ice in the water pail is thinner. A bird calls from the bare tree behind the shrine. Someone whispers, "Haru wa sugu, spring is close." You don't believe it, but you want to. And that's enough to get you through one more freezing night, with your back against a cracked wall, a shared blanket over your knees, and the memory of soup on your tongue. The thaw begins slowly, almost shyly, like nature is unsure whether it's safe to come out yet. You notice it first in the mud. What used to be a slab of frost now squelches underfoot with each step. The air smells different too, still cold, but with a promise baked into it. Damp moss, old leaves, something green rising. You wake one morning to birdsong. Just one bird singing like it forgot what month it was. The village isn't cheering yet. No one says the word spring aloud. But you can feel it hovering in the mist, like gossip. Your tasks shift. No more huddling by the fire, no more idle repair work. Now it's prep time. The fields need clearing tools, need fixing seeds, need blessing. Everything needs scrubbing. So do you. You are gently but firmly pointed toward the river, with a fresh set of woven underthings and a wooden comb. Apparently, the village has collectively agreed that your aroma now qualifies as a community problem. The river is still frigid, but there's no ice. You dip a toe. You scream internally. But you do it. You scrub. You use the riverbed's gritty silt like soap. You dunk, splash, shiver. You try not to think about the fish you may have mildly offended months ago. By the time you're done, your skin feels raw and your soul feels exfoliated. You return clean and are met with approving nods. A boy sniffs theatrically and gives you a thumbs up. You accept it like an Olympic medal. Here's your historical fact. Villagers often took ritual river baths, before planting season a symbolic cleansing of the self, before re-entering the cycle of life and labor. These early spring ablutions were as spiritual as they were hygienic, meant to reset one's place in the social and agricultural order. Later that day, you help reassemble torii gates that were damaged in the winter storms. The shrine must look its best for the coming seasonal rites. You hammer wood, retie ropes, sweep ash, and then you're asked to join the offering. You, the outsider, the footbower, the mouse mitten wearer. They hand you a bundle of dried kelp and folded paper strips. You kneel beside the priest and place it gently on the altar hands, trembling only slightly. The other villagers bow as you do. No one laughs, no one flinches. You've graduated from invisible to honorary awkward uncle. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some villages, the first seeds of spring were sown by a pure person, someone who had fasted, bathed, and refrained from speaking for a full day. You unfortunately spoke a lot, mostly to yourself, so you don't qualify. But still, you're there. The next days are full of motion. People spread out across the land like hopeful ants. You're assigned to digging irrigation channels, muddy, back-breaking work. But you get good at it. Your hands no longer blister, your legs no longer wobble. You move with rhythm. One afternoon, an old woman offers you a bite of steamed toro and says, "You're not as soft as you were." You beam. Even if not soft, is the closest thing to a compliment in months. Here's the scholarly debate. Some historians suggest the seasonal calendar dictated peasant identity more than class or family name. That being part of the planting cycle was what truly made you belong. Others argue that identity was locked in by blood registry, and caste no amount of hoeing could change that. But you've learned something different. Sweat has its own kind of passport. One evening, the air finally loses its bite. A child dances barefoot through the puddles. The plum trees bud. And for the first time, you allow yourself to believe it. You made it through winter. You are not the same person who arrived here lost and shivering, squatting incorrectly over an outhouse. Now you squat like a pro. You can carry firewood with one hand, avoid eye contact with samurai, and haggle down a turnip like a local. You are in every possible way slightly less terrible at this. Spring doesn't arrive with trumpets. It just slides quietly into the cracks of your life. A bloom here, a breeze there, a whispered laugh. And for now, that's everything. And then just like that, the rice returns. Not in bowls, not on plates, not steaming beside pickled vegetables, but in motion, in chaos, in sweat. Planting season. The fields once frozen and forgotten are now living things, soaked, churned, humming with insects and human effort. Water is diverted through bamboo pipes. Dikes are reinforced with bundled reeds, and everyone becomes some version of a farmer, including you. Especially you. You are handed a rice bundle and pointed toward the mud. It's not a suggestion. You step in, and the world disappears below your knees. Cold, oozy, foul-smelling. It sucks at your feet like it wants to keep you forever. You lurch forward, fall, catch yourself with both hands. The villagers laugh, not cruelly, just knowingly. Everyone falls on their first day. You take a breath. Try again. This time you move slowly, sliding your feet rather than lifting them, learning the swamp dance of the paddies. You reach the edge of the row. Kneel, grab a clump of seedlings, thin green, delicate as thread, and plant. 1, 2, 3, and again, and again. By noon, your back is screaming. Your hands are puckered. Your thighs are numb. You've accidentally swallowed mud twice, but you're keeping up. Mostly. Here's your historical fact. Rice was everything in feudal Japan. It was food, money, tax status. One koku of rice, roughly 150 kilograms, could support a person for a year. Samurai stipends were measured in it. Peasant worth was measured by how much of it they could grow and how much they had to surrender. Planting was a communal effort. back-breaking, rhythmic, and oddly musical. You start to hear it, the work song. The woman beside you begins it, a low, melodic call. Another answers. Then a man across the field picks it up. Soon the rhythm of the field is set not just by movement, but music. The syllables are old. The meaning is half lost, but the tone is clear. We work together. Here's your quirky tidbit: in some villages, planting songs, Tawe Uta, were believed to please the rice spirits. If sung well, they could ensure a bountiful harvest. If sung poorly, well, let's just say you hum very quietly. Your planting line isn't perfect. It zigzags a little. One row ends abruptly when a frog launches itself directly at your face and you fall over with a scream. You get teased, deservedly. But they don't send you away. They keep you in the line. At one point, the head woman passes by. She pauses, watches you plant, then gives a single silent nod before moving on. You nearly plant a seedling upside down from shock. By afternoon, the fields are filled. The water shimmers with green. The sky turns golden. And when the last seedling is set, everyone climbs onto the dry bank and collapses. You do too. Someone hands you a rice cake. It's warm, soft, filled with sweet bean paste. It's the best thing you've ever tasted. Here's the scholarly debate. Did communal planting reinforce social cohesion or simply camouflage systemic exploitation? Some historians point to the rituals and songs as evidence of cultural strength. Others note how those who resisted planting demands due to age, illness, or protest were punished, ostracized, or worse. You can believe both. The rice field doesn't care why you're there. It only needs your hands. That night, there's a small gathering. Nothing formal, just a few villagers and a gourd of sake. You're invited. You sit, sip, listen. They talk of the harvest to come, of weddings delayed, of relatives in other villages. One man tells a joke involving a fox spirit and a soba cart. You don't get it, but you laugh anyway, loudly, and someone refills your cup. Later, walking home under a sliver moon, feet still squishy with paddy water, you realize something strange. You're no longer waiting to wake up from this. You're just here. And in this mud-soaked moment, with rice beneath your nails and warmth in your chest, you feel, against all logic, almost happy. Word count, Ktantu 98. It starts with a whisper. You're helping mend a fence near the village edge, tying reed bundles to a cracked beam, when two women walk by carrying laundry baskets and speaking in hushed tones. You hear the words, Shah Ronin, men from the hills, missing goat. You look up. No one else reacts, but you've learned to trust the silence in this place, the collective tight-lipped stillness that only shows up when something really bad might be coming. That evening, the village elders meet at the shrine. Not publicly, quietly. You're not invited, but you watch from a distance as men and women you've only ever seen sewing or sweeping now whisper urgently, faces drawn. Something's wrong. And the next morning confirms it. Tracks, deep ones, too many, heavy, leading from the forest into the outer fields. A chicken is missing, then a goat, then terrifyingly someone's sickle. You help investigate. You find flattened grass, a broken sandal strap, scorch marks on a tree, evidence of a fire. They're close. Here's your historical fact. The Edo period may have been peaceful on paper, but rural villages often faced threats from Ronin masterless samurai. Some wandered as mercenaries or monks, but others turned to banditry. Small remote communities with little defense were easy targets for quick raids. The village is on edge. Extra watches are posted. You're handed a stick carved to look a little more like a weapon than it really is. and told to patrol with the younger boys. You nod solemnly, even though your previous combat experience mostly involves arguing with mosquitoes. That night, you barely sleep. Not from fear exactly, though that's there humming in your gut, but from the sheer weight of it all. Of knowing that even after all you've survived, famine, fire, frostbite, someone could just take it all in a night. No warning, no mercy. At dawn, smoke curls from the western hill. A fire. Too far to be accidental. The elders make a decision. They'll send a messenger to the next town, requesting help from the regional magistrate. But that will take days, maybe more. In the meantime, you stay alert. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some villages built false huts at their edges, empty homes with food scraps and sleeping mats designed to trick bandits into stealing from them instead of the real thing. Sort of like rural decoys, poor man's bait. Your village doesn't have those, so they make do. The shrine is reinforced. The children are told to hide in the granary if anything happens. You're stationed near the rice paddies with a farmer who looks like he once wrestled a boar and won. You feel safer. A little. Then night falls. The forest breathes heavily. You clutch your stick and watch. Nothing. An hour passes, then another. You start to relax, until you hear it, a rustle. A low voice, a metallic clink. You don't breathe. The farmer beside you raises a hand, then points. 3 shadows, moving near the granary. One carrying something long, definitely not a farming tool. The others crouched low, fast. And then a shout. A young villager, too eager, springs from hiding and charges. The shadows scatter. One turns and swings, metal flashes, but misses. The shout becomes a scream, not of pain, of fear. The others leap from hiding. You follow. It's over in a moment. The shadows vanish into the trees. No blood, no fight, just noise and footsteps. They were testing, not taking. Yet. The village doesn't sleep that night, but no one dies. Here's the scholarly debate: were Ronin truly villains or victims of a broken system? Some scholars argue they were remnants of a warrior class with no warmen trained for combat, but left economically and socially adrift. Others see them as opportunists who exploited the vulnerable. Maybe they were both ghosts of a violent past, clinging to swords in a world that no longer needed them. The next morning, the messenger returns early. He intercepted a patrol. Help is coming. There's no second attack. No one says why. But by the end of the week, the tension eases. The watches end. You go back to fence mending, and someone gives your stick a little white ribbon, ties it around the handle, and says, "Now it's lucky. You keep it." Because honestly, you need all the luck you can get. The rains return first. Not the cold, icy sheets of winter or the angry storms of last autumn, but something softer, persistent. Kind of how a puppy might drool on your feet. The air smells like wet leaves and rebirth. You know it's supposed to mean life, but all it really means is mud. Again. Still, everything's different now. The village feels full. People laugh more. The elders tell stories again loudly. You even hear singing from the granary some mornings. You're back to hauling wood, clearing paths, helping repair carts. Nothing dramatic, just normal. And it's in that rhythm, in the quiet repeat of days, that something surprising happens. You start to think of this place as home. You never intended to. You still don't belong by blood or by name, but you belong by effort, by presence. You know the best place to step in the rice field to avoid sinking. You can tell who's approaching by the cadence of their sandals. The children no longer run away. When you appear, they run toward you with demands to carry things or fix things or listen to things that don't make sense. And maybe most shocking, you smile. More than once a day, here's your historical fact. The typical peasant in feudal Japan lived their entire life within a radius of 10-15 kilometers, often dying within sight of where they were born. They farmed, married, had children, and died without once leaving the valley. And yet their sense of identity was deeply rooted in land rhythm and community. They didn't need to leave to feel alive. You've stopped asking when you'll get out. You've stopped waiting for a sign or a tear in the timeline or a miracle portal disguised as a shrine broom closet. You're just here. You clean the shrine steps one morning. No one tells you to, you just do it. The priest sees you, nods, and offers you a rice dumpling. No ceremony, no fanfare, just an acknowledgement. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some parts of rural Japan, when someone from outside the village performed 7 seasonal duties without failure, they were permitted a symbolic place on the edge of the registry scroll, a half-member of the community. You haven't seen the scroll. You probably never will. But you're pretty sure someone mentioned your name at last week's meeting. The day you get your first real job alone delivering a sealed letter to the town beyond the hills, you almost cry. It's not glamorous, it's not paid, but it means something. It means trust. You climb the slope with a travel pouch full of rice, a small blade you don't know how to use, and the stick with the lucky white ribbon. You've never been this far before. The forest is quiet, cool. The moss glows in patches. You cross a rickety bridge that creaks dramatically, like it's auditioning for a ghost story. On the way, you meet a merchant resting on a rock. He asks your name. You hesitate. And then, without thinking, you answer with the name you gave months ago. The fake one. But this time, it doesn't feel fake. It feels earned. Here's the scholarly debate: was feudal identity fixed, or could it shift through participation? Some argue that castes and class were immovable stones in Edo society. Others point to recorded exceptions: adopted sons, monk converts, laborers turned village heads. Social rigidity was strong, yes, but so was necessity. And nothing encourages acceptance quite like showing up again and again, rain or shine. You return at sundown. The head woman says nothing, just takes the letter, nods once, and hands you half a salted daikon, which in this village might as well be a knighthood. Later that night by the fire, you tell the children a story you make up on the spot, about a fox who stole rice from a tengu and had to disguise himself as a farmer. They laugh. One girl says the fox sounds like you. She's not wrong, and you don't correct her. You lie down in your corner, your mat, your blanket, your walls with names etched into the beams, and listen to the rain. This world tried to freeze you, drown you, starve you, embarrass you, rob you, and possibly curse you. But somehow you lasted. Not with strength, not with cunning, just by showing up. Every day. And if you're lucky, you'll wake tomorrow with chores to do and mud to dodge and miso soup to scald your tongue. Which sounds a lot like peace. You did it. You lasted a day in feudal Japan, and then another, and another. Until days blurred into seasons and survival became second nature. Not easy. Never that. But possible. Barely. The world you stumbled into was never built for you, its rules carved by centuries, its people hardened by necessity, its comforts earned one splinter, one rice grain at a time. You arrived with wide eyes and soft feet, and this place didn't care. It gave you no welcome party, no gentle tutorial, just cold floors, hard work, strange food, and silence. But somehow, without realizing when it happened, you stopped being the outsider who flinched at every rooster cry, who couldn't bow without falling over, who didn't know which plants cured fever and which caused hallucinations. Now you move like the others. You've memorized the texture of the soil. You know which bucket leaks. You've learned that trust here is measured in chores, done not words said. And maybe, just maybe, you'd stay. Not because it's comfortable, but because you finally know what it means to belong without needing to be understood. The stars wheel overhead, silent witnesses to every misstep and miracle you survived. Your bed is still thin. Your feet still ache. But the wind no longer bites, and the village no longer whispers when you pass. So you rest now. Let your breathing slow. Let the fire's warmth curl around your toes. Let the weight of the world, of all the absurd, muddy, remarkable hours you've just lived, settle into your bones like stories into earth. You were never meant to last a day here, but somehow you did. And maybe that's enough. Good night, traveler. Sleep well. You've earned it. End of script. Sweet dreams.